This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop last-minute deals now.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. In recent days, Donald Trump and his advisors have left no doubt he will attempt to deport as many of the 11 million undocumented people in this country as possible. But intriguingly, they're already packaging this with a new kind of spin designed to make this plan look humane. On Fox News, Alina Habba, who will be a top White House lawyer, offered this spin in striking fashion. She said, in effect, no, we're not going to separate families as part of this mass deportation effort. Instead, we're going to deport whole families so they can come back in the right way. That spin is deeply revealing, and here to help us explain why is Vanessa Cardenas, the executive director of America's Voice. We'll be talking about all of this. Thanks for coming on, Vanessa.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Alina Habba. She's a lawyer for Trump. She'll be counselor to the president, and she's a major MAGA figure. The audio's a bit long, but it's worth it. Listen to this.
Nobody is breaking up families. Nobody is targeting individuals and making sure that one over the other goes out. That doesn't happen under President Trump. It didn't happen before. But you do not have a right to come here to endanger us or to not come in here the right way. You can come in as an immigrant, as my parents did, but you must do it the right way. So there's nobody that understands it better than I do, but I can assure you, Tom Homan, as tough as nails as he is, he's looking out for us. And child trafficking is something he's spoken about extensively. And that is why he wants to get families, if they will cooperate, out and in the right way.
Vanessa, this is the emerging spin. Habba clearly is trying to say, don't worry, you won't see families separated like during Trump's first term. But then she gives away the game at the end, saying we're going to have to remove entire families. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it sounds like they're rewriting their whole script. I think from our perspective, these are the things that we know. One, we know that under the Trump administration, the immigrant community suffered tremendously. And we all remember the family separations that occurred. We all remember the kids in cages. We all remember the kids that were forcibly removed from their parents' arms. And that was not something that we imagined. It's something that actually happened. And that's why the American public revolted against those policies. So we know what happened under the Trump administration. Second, while Trump was running in this last, year and a half, and not just Trump, but the entire GOP, they have embraced a very extreme and very damaging sort of narratives around immigrants, blaming them for everything under the sun, from crime to invasion to trying to replace quote unquote white people, real Americans. So, I think that because we know all of that, it's hard to believe what their spin right now. So the last piece of evidence for that is that you have people like Stephen Miller and Tom Homan, who are obviously key figures in the Trump administration. And Tom Homan, in previous interviews, have said things like no one is off the table, meaning that, they're going to deport anyone that they deem should not be here. And from what we have heard, it's pretty much undocumented immigrants, period. And they have the intention and the desire and they have been very clear about their plans to target as many people as possible.
No question about it. So let's talk about what the Trump policy actually is. Over the weekend, in his interview with Meet the Press, Trump confirmed that, yes, they're going to try to deport everybody, but they're going to start with the criminals, they say. Can I ask, Vanessa, how do you see this unfolding exactly? Obviously, there will be a lot of obstacles to even deporting all the criminals, including due process, budgetary constraints. But regardless, how far do you anticipate them getting with that? And when do you think they'll actually start getting to everybody else, the people who have been here for a very long time? In other words, what's this going to really look like?
Right. Well, I think it's really important for us to understand that the reason that they're trying to spin this now is because they know that most Americans are going to be very uncomfortable seeing, again, families being separated, seeing their coworkers, their neighbors being forcibly removed. They understand that, and I think that's why they're trying to spin it. They're trying to say that they're going to go after quote unquote criminals. I think that, again, once Americans see the real impact that's going to have, not just at a human level, which of course is devastating, but also in terms of the impact it's going to have in our economy, they're going to reject it. In terms of how they deploy this, I do think they're going to try to, again, justify their mass deportation efforts with some high visible rates and targeting maybe, blue cities and I think they're going to try to be as visible and use the media as they have done. But I think, again, people are not going to accept that. And that's our hope. I think most Americans are going to reject the efforts once they see the real impact on their communities.
Well, I think there's a decent chance that people like Alina Habba know that this is going to be politically very tough. I mean, let's go back to her quote for a second. They can say we're going to remove the criminals first, as Trump and his spinners often do, but either they intend to deport everyone else or they don't. And the fact is they do. And here Habba acknowledges that they do intend to do that, then tries to make it sound humane, right? By saying, of course, we're keeping families together. But she can't help but admit that Trump's plan, as described, entails removing whole families. So it looks to me like Habba understands the vulnerability here, the political vulnerability here. What do you think?
I think they do, and that's why they're trying to spin it. But as you have said, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth because in other interviews, and I think it was Homan and even Trump in his interview over the weekend, where he said that, that the entire families are going to be deported because if there's a member of a family who's undocumented, the whole family is going to have to leave. So again, I think they're trying to spin it, but they understand how damaging this is to their agenda. But, the other point I wanna just really drive home on this, Greg, is that, we have to be clear that this policy is not going to deliver what Trump promised. It's going to hurt our families. It means empty chairs around our dinner table. It means, teachers and healthcare workers and construction workers. Those are the people that Trump is targeting.
We're actually seeing some communities around the country already resisting the mass deportations, right? We've heard, for instance, in Texas, the construction industry, where a lot of undocumented immigrants work, they're saying if you really go through with your deportation plans, you're going to really wreck our local economies. And we're seeing similar things in Georgia as well. And so I think what that shows is that even Republican places are starting to realize that maybe we weren't allowed to say this before, but undocumented immigrants are essential to our communities and our economies. And if anything, once the Trumpists really start pushing hard on this, we're going to have to actually have a real debate about what it is they're trying to do and what the impact could be. And hopefully some of these Republican areas can be very clear about the detrimental impact that this is going to have. Are you hopeful that people, even in red areas, will step forward and, say, if you do this, it's going to really be damaging?
Yeah, and we really need those voices. We really need courageous voices, not just from immigrant communities, to step up and really meet this moment. Yeah, I think you're right, and we saw a little bit of that in Ohio when J.D. Vance and Trump attacked the Haitian community there. And one of the most important, and I think forceful voices there were business owners, employers who talked about Haitian immigrants who were key to their businesses. And I think this is a moment where we need, again, different voices to speak out. And I do think, I mean, you mentioned a couple of industries, but the construction industry, almost 17% of workers in the construction industry are undocumented immigrants. Same thing in agriculture, home care, and the list goes on and on. But here's the stubborn truth about this debate, Greg, and this is what drives me crazy. There are two facts. One is that immigration, by far, is a positive story to our history. Immigration by far is a contributing factor to the genius of America. Immigration is an essential part of our story, and it is a positive story of contributions, of hard work, of opportunity. And that's the real story of immigration in the United States. And here's the other stubborn fact, which, again, it drives me crazy, and I think people forget, is that immigration is essential for our current and our future prosperity. Whether you look at the different ways in which our economy has to grow, whether you look at entire sectors of our economy that depend on immigrant workers, and whether you look at how to best grow our economy in the future. So what is really disconcerting about this whole debate is that it's not based on facts. It is based on these really damaging narratives and scapegoating of immigrants. And I really would like us to be having a real policy discussion about what's really needed for the United States to manage migration in an effective manner. But that's not what Trump is offering, and he's actually setting us farther back by demonizing immigrants and by creating these divisions that do not get us any closer to actually have an effective immigration system that can meet the needs of our nation.
With the election of Donald Trump, staying informed is more important than ever, and we're thankful you've chosen to listen to the DSR Network. Through the turbulent times ahead, we will continue to provide the insightful expert analysis on the issues that matter most around the world. We ask that you consider becoming a member to support our effort to provide you the best content possible. DSR members gain access to an ad-free listening experience, exclusive members-only segments of our shows, our members-only Discord community, and more. Use code HOLIDAY25 to get 50% off of your membership subscription at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. That's code HOLIDAY25 at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. The DSR Network will evolve in exciting ways in the new year, and we hope you'll join us.
Well, clearly the resistance in places like Texas and Georgia, and there will be a lot more, shows what you're talking about, which is that we need a pathway for these undocumented immigrants to work. And, red areas are saying so very clearly. They're saying we need these people here. And clearly we're not having the debate. Can I ask you, though, Vanessa, so Democrats lost Latino voters in sort of startlingly large numbers in this election. What's your take on why that happened, given that Trump was campaigning so overtly on an anti-immigrant message?
Mm-hmm. So listen, we can, again, talk for hours on this topic, but here's where I stand on this. And, I come from an immigrant family, and my family is very diverse. We have people from both Central America and South America and everywhere in between. And I think it's a combination of factors. I think, one, the economy has always been a top issue for Latino voters, always, with immigration coming third or, a close second. But, the economy is fundamental. And I think most people don't understand why. What it's not just a matter of like money, or like, it's actually a question of like the safety and security of my family, and it is a central part of like Latino families wanting to make sure that their families are taken care of, and the reason why they embrace and believe in the American dream and everything that this country has to offer. So I think that's a big piece of it. I think there's also, and I say this as an immigration advocate, I think there's also deep disappointment among Latino voters on Democrats, because they feel like they have not delivered, and you can come up with all the reasons. But listen, the community has always stood with Democrats when it comes to this issue. I'm old enough that I remember the marches in 2006, the millions of people who came out, who just stood there and just, demonstrated their support for policies to reform our immigration system. So I think the community has always been there, but they're just tired of the promises and they feel like they need a change. And the last piece I would say is that there is this real sense of unfairness. When you have people in your family who have been in the United States 20 plus years and don't have a legal pass or a work permit, and you have recent arrivals who do, right? So I think there's also that unfairness. So, I don't think that Democrats have lost Latino voters for the long term by far. I think that Latino voters align very much with quote unquote progressive values. But I think they're also sending a message, and they're saying, you have to take my vote for real and for serious, and you have to actually deliver. And, and amidst all of this negativity, for me, the silver lining is that in moments like this, it forces us to really think about what we're offering, right? Our constituencies. And I think the path forward is to just, for Democrats at least, is for really think about what their vision for immigration is and how to get there, and what are the kinds of things that the Latino voters demand. And the last thing I would say on this is Latino voters have always been very pragmatic, and when you ask them what they want on immigration, it is a combination of compassion and legalization and legal pathways, but also, order at the border, which reflects what most Americans want.
I want to add to your point about Democrats and share what disappoints me about them, or disappointed me about them in this campaign on immigration. They just didn't come out and clearly say what you said, which is immigration is good for the country. Now, you heard it here and there, right? Kamala Harris did talk about a path to citizenship in select places, but not too often. It was all border security, and I get why Democrats had to emphasize border security. I think they do have to. But the thing they didn't say is what you said. Immigration's good for our country. They want to kill it, meaning Republicans want to kill it. And that message did not come through.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult when you have sort of the leader of the Republican Party plus the whole echo chamber, right? The whole ecosystem pounding on this negative narrative and, pouring almost $1 billion or more than $1 billion on anti-immigration ads constantly, and you have silence on the other side. So to your point, I think that also, of course, has had an impact on voters, including Latino voters.
Just to close this out, I want to go back to the Alina Habba quote for a second. Note that she actually says the families will go out and then in the right way. Mm-hmm. The right way. Mm-hmm. That's an illusion, because the Trumpists are going to try to restrict the right way for immigrants to enter in every conceivable fashion they can get away with. But the thing is, what I take from that is that Alina Habba knows that people still see immigration as a good thing for the country. So she's trying to create the impression that the Trump policy is to just temporarily remove people and then let them back in the right way, to create the idea that there's an orderly pathway and it'll all be fine. But it won't be fine. And hopefully, can I ask you this, Vanessa? Will mass deportations get people to realize what you said, which is that what they want is immigration managed well for the country, in addition to border security. Will the cruelty of mass deportations get people to finally get to that place where they realize that that's what they want?
I think so, maybe. I think what we saw back in 2017, 18, 19 is sort of the rejections of Trump's policies. And I think, once again, Americans, when they see the real impacts of mass deportations on their daily lives and on their friends and families and coworkers, they're going to reject that. So that it might be that we have to go through sort of the dark night to be able to see, a better day for us. Unfortunately, we might have to go through it, but obviously we're going to put a fight every step of the way.
Vanessa Cardenas, thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler and the DSR Network.